About 3 years ago, my mom passed away. She died of a horrible death that left me questioning why. Because I believe in healing. And I go all over the world, and I've seen amazing healings, and I've seen them here right in America. But she didn't get physically healed with all my prayers, and the 3 years she suffered with Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't know if you're aware of that disease, but it's worse than cancer. It's worse. It's the most horrible, devilish disease on the earth, I think. So she went ahead and passed away with that. And I was very close to my mother, and we have a very close family. My mom was like one of my best friends. And for those of you that aren't close to your mothers, I'm sorry. I really am. Because a mother's love is really something very special. And find forgiveness, because that's okay. The Lord is good anyway. He's always good. So my mom passed away in August of 2011. And I worked it out in my heart. I wasn't mad at God. Of course, I would never get mad at my Lord. I've learned not to do that. It's never a winning proposition when that happens. So I just trusted him and believed, and I had led my mother to the Lord probably 10 years, 15 years ago. Maybe even, I think before I was married, I led her to the Lord. We'll be married 29 years? 28 years, I lose track. 1986 is when we got married. In June, we'll be married that many years. So before that, I led her to the Lord. My friend from New Mexico was visiting me in January after my mom had passed away in August. And I was really depressed. I mean, have you ever just gone to bed sick to your stomach and woke up sick to your stomach and not wanting to get out of bed, like ever? I understand that there's, a mental disease of depression that takes over people's lives. Lack of whatever hormones they need causes them to be clinically depressed. I get that. But this was just so deep that I just couldn't wake up in the morning because my mother died. And everybody gets sad when you lose somebody, but what was starting to happen to me was I was getting gripped with a spirit of grief. There's a difference from being sad, because you rightly so, something sad happens, you're sad, and then there's a spirit that grips you where nothing makes you happy, and you want to just die. That's not the normal kind of grief, okay? I was getting that way. I didn't want to get out of bed. I lost my mother, darn it. And I just was suffering with that every day. So my friend from New Mexico came up, and she was staying with me in January, and I was sharing with her this depression I was in. And I was sharing with her, I can't believe my mother died like that. So we were in conversation like that. And she said, Wendy, why don't you just go ask to see her? And I go, because I don't go ask to see dead people. Just don't do that. She's like, no, it happens all the time. People see their loved ones after they die, and my grandpa has come to me like 3 or 4 times after he died, and no, it's no big deal. And I'm thinking, I think that's kind of a big deal. I don't think I want to do that. And she loves Jesus. She's a very wonderful woman of God. And she's like, no, it's all right, just whatever. And I'm like, okay. So she goes to bed. This is one night. She goes to bed. And I'm sitting there in my chair going, that's weird. I'm not going to ask that. Because you know the story of when, Saul went to call up, who from the dead, Samuel from the dead. Remember that? He went to the witch of Endor and was calling up. And that was just a bad thing to do. Okay, so I wasn't going to do anything like that. Okay, so I go to bed that night, and I wake up the next morning like 3:45 in the morning, and I get up, and I have this chair I go to. It's my little recliner, So I went to my chair, and I have this really fuzzy blanket. It's really cool. It's like a bear blanket. And I put it over me, and it was dark. I put it over me, and I got in like the fetal position. And I was sad. I just woke up sad. And I go, God, I would never pray to see the dead. I would never do that. You know my heart. You know my heart. I love you and you alone. You're the only one I ever want to see. But everybody keeps telling me that you can see your loved ones, and I don't know how I feel about that. Lord, I don't wanna pray to the dead. And I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, she's not dead, she's alive. And I went, what? Oh yeah, I know she's alive, but no, she's alive. You're not praying to the dead, she's alive. And I go, really? Okay. Just stay with me on this, okay? Track with me on this. So I said to the Lord, to Jesus, I said, God, you are my everything. You are my king. You are the one. But if you'd let me see that she's okay, that would be amazing. Like, whoa. Because I kind of had some hope, right? And I mean, no sooner than I batted my eyes that fast, I was taken up into atmosphere. And I went up, and my feet, remember what I was wearing. Even though physically in my chair I had pajamas on, in my experience, in my encounter, I was fully dressed. I had jeans on, I had a t-shirt on, I had tennis shoes on. And I'm literally, it's like you're standing right there. I could pinch myself like I wasn't dreaming. Okay, this is really happening. You remember when Paul said, I don't know if I was in the body or out of the body, but I was just taken to the third heaven, and I saw things that are that I don't know if I was in my body or out of my body, but I was taken there, okay? So I'm standing on atmosphere, and everything underneath me was black, and it was kind of like, ooh, this is cool. And I remember standing there and just floating on atmosphere, and then this huge door, probably from that end of the wall to that end of the wall, as high as the eye can see, I'm in front of this door. And I'm thinking, wow. And immediately the door kind of opens about that much, kind of opens enough so they can see me. And there I was approached with this entity. It didn't have wings. It wasn't a person. It wasn't St. Peter at the door. It was nothing like that. It was like an orb. Are you guys familiar with what orbs are? They're like those round things you see in the photographs. And sometimes you'll see one jet by you. They're like the light that jets by. You see them out of the corner of your eye sometimes. Right there, I'm encountering with an orb, and I couldn't see a face on him, and it was a man because it was a man's voice. Couldn't see arms. It was just this floaty thing right there. And I went, whoa. He says to me, without a mouth, he didn't have a mouth or eyes or anything, but he said, I could hear his voice, and he said, we've been waiting for you. And I went, oh. And he says, he looks at me like I could see, even though he didn't have eyes, I could see him looking at me. I could see him like looking from the top to the bottom of my person. And he goes, you can't come in here like that. Take your shoes off. So I'm on atmosphere doing this, right? And I like reach over, and I'm just floating on the atmosphere, and I put my tennis shoes, and they're just floating right there. And it was awesome. And he goes, oh yeah, and you can't come in here like that. And I just felt this wave. He just went, whoo, like this wave, and I was covered in white. And I thought, wow. He goes, come on in. And so I did. And I'm barefooted, and I step, and immediately I step, and it's gold. Streets are very gold up there. And I'm standing on gold, and I thought, wow, barefoot on gold. That's a good song right there. I'm thinking, I got to write a song about being barefoot on gold. So I'm just standing there, and I'm just looking as far as the eye can see of just white, people in white, just walking around, people in white. And a lot of people who have an experience of heaven and go there, they can talk about all the colors and all the flowers are this big, and all these things they talk about. I didn't see that. And the reason I think I didn't see that is because I believe God wanted me just to see my mother. I wasn't there to inhabit all of heaven. Does that make sense? He's able to focus me on what I needed to be focused on. And what I saw was gold streets, white robes, and I looked to the left there, and I saw a big rock. It was probably 100 feet away, and this woman was sitting on the rock, and she looked at me, and she looked just like that. That was my mother when she was 20, and she looked like that. She had her black hair and her little bangs and her young face. That is my mother right now in heaven, right now. And she was sitting on the rock, and she looked over me, and our eyes met, and I went, oh, and she's like, oh, like this, and I'm like, oh. And so I run over in my little white robe, and I was very in, me. I didn't have my new body. I was very much me, okay? But she did. She was sitting on the rock, and she had like her feet in this water. And I went, oh, and I got on the rock, and I touched her. I go, Mom, I gave her a hug. How are you? She's like, great. Okay, now, let me ask y'all this. Some of you, not everyone, but some of you have experienced maybe how it felt to be a little bit high on some recreational drugs in your life. Come on. Don't act like you haven't, okay? Some of you, I'm not saying everyone, but some of you in this room have. You know that, just that dopey, literal dopey happy look you have? Like nothing can rock you off your whatever, right? Nothing can rock you off. That's the look she had. And I'm thinking, that's perfect peace right there. Wow. Okay, so she's like, oh, and I'm like, okay. So we're sitting on this rock together. I'm with my mom, and we're sitting on this rock, and we're just talking, how are you? And I'm like, she had her feet in the water, so she goes, put your feet in the water. So I did. I put my feet in the water, and I'll tell you right now, I don't have a word. I don't have an English word that can explain to you how beautiful the water was. There is no word. The only word I can think of in my language is it was perfect. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. It was perfect. Okay, so let that mean whatever that means to you. And I had my feet in the water, and I'm just like, oh, this is beautiful water. And I'm just got both my feet like this, and we're doing this in the water, right? And I go, what is this water? This is awesome. She said, this is the water that flows from the throne. This is the river of life. And I I'm still in awe just telling you about it, because it was so holy. So I'm sitting there, and I just have my feet in the water, and I'm like, Mom, is Aunt Bonnie here? She's like, she's here. Is Agnes here? She's here. And I started naming off all these names. Now my grandma hadn't died yet, so my grandma died in July, so my grandma was still on the earth, okay, so I didn't ask about that. But I'm like, oh, is Joey here? He's here. And I'm like, oh, really, where are they? And he goes, and I could just see her face change and go, you're here for me. You're here for me. And I thought, yeah, that knocked me back on why I can't just experience all of heaven right now, So I was sitting here, and we talked. And I'm just like, oh, I miss you so much. She goes, I miss you, but you don't, we're just having conversation. I can't remember every word that was spoken, but we were just lovingly having conversation. And then I hear choirs of, hallelujah. It's choirs of angels, just massive amounts of voices and singing. And I believe what the Lord did is he opened up my ears because he had things to tell me. In fact, I was just like, whoa, what's that? And my mom's like, those are the angels. They're singing all the time. They're singing. I'm like, oh. And I'm just experiencing it and just taking it in and, just being with her and experiencing. Oh, I said, where's Jesus, Mom? Where's Jesus? Because, I'm just like a little kid up there. And I'm like, where's Jesus, Mom? She goes like this. She goes, he's here. He's the Son. I'm like, okay, I get that, but no, really, where is Jesus? Where I want to see him. No, honey, he's right here. And I know the Bible talks about that there will be no need of sunshine. There'll be no need of anything because he will be the all in all, right? And she was experiencing that. And I thought, okay, I'll put that on the back burner, but I really do want to see him, But that wasn't my moment. My moment was to be with her. Okay, so I hear the angels singing, and then all of a sudden, God begins to speak to me. And he spoke to me through my mind. And I could hear his voice loud and clear. And it was the voice of the Father. It wasn't Jesus. My sheep know my voice. This wasn't Jesus' voice. This is the Father's voice. And he said, Wendi, and he called me by name. Just telling you makes me want to cry. He said, Wendi. And he started telling me the reason for the cross. He started telling me the reason for the cross of Jesus. He said, Wendi, before Jesus went to the earth and died on the cross for the sins of mankind, this place was empty. Jesus populated heaven, Wendi. Jesus populated heaven. I had nobody up here. I was by myself. It's basically what he was saying. And he said, Jesus, and then when Jesus died, he went down into the belly of the earth, and he started bringing my remembrance about, the scripture where Jesus went down and set the captives free. And went in, and all those that were in Abraham's bosom waiting for the promise of Messiah were all set free and got to come up to be with God forever in everlasting life. That was so real to me when he was speaking. And this is just mind to mind. It says we have the mind of Christ. That's how he talks to you. Mind of God to mind of man. Mind to mind of Christ, right? And I could just hear his mind mixing with my mind. And he said, Jesus populated this place. And I went, oh my goodness. It was like all of Revelation. My mind was so expanded, I just wanted to burst. Because I was still in my body, and I'm experiencing this experience in heaven. Then my mom immediately, she knew God was talking to me. For all I know, she could hear it too. Okay? He was telling us both this, but I know I was hearing it. She turned around and she puts her hand on my knee and she said, Wendi, thank you for telling me about this place. Thank you for telling me about this place. Because when I became a Christian in 1977, you could not shut me up. You could not shut me up. I had a vision in my bedroom of Jesus Christ, and you could not tell me that didn't happen. And when I went downstairs that next morning and told my mother and my father what happened to me, they thought I was crazy. They told me I was in a cult. They told me that I was mentally ill, that I needed medication, that I was making this stuff up. They told me, my mom, I remember, I'm reverting for a minute here. My mom was in the kitchen one morning when I was telling her about Jesus Christ and about his death on the cross and about his resurrection. And then there's everlasting life for us. When I was telling her that in the kitchen, she turned to me, she goes, you shut up or I'm going to come over there and slap your face. She told me that. She did. I'm going to slap your face if you don't shut up. And I looked at her and I go, you know what? You need to come slap me right now because Jesus said I would be persecuted for him. So come on, bring your best shot. I told my mother that. Come right now. And she just went, ah! And she would slam the door and go outside. That's how adamant she was against the gospel. And when I visited her in heaven, and she turned to me and she put her hand on my knee and she said, Wendi, thank you for telling me about this place. Thank you. Because I didn't give up. And every chance I had, I shared with her at the expense of getting kicked out of my house. So, back up into the kitchen. There was very tense in my home for about 2 months. But I just took it out to the streets. I just took the gospel to Stockton, took it on the streets with the people in my church. And my mom, I'd come home and she'd say, I don't want you going on those streets, they're too dangerous. I go, Mom, Jesus is my refuge. He will protect me. You know, everything was just about Jesus. So she finally gave her heart to the Lord. I remember being in the living room probably 2 or 3 months later, and I said, Mom, are you sure you don't want to meet this man that I love so much? You know, are you sure? Because he's awesome. And then I remember one time she said, I can never give my heart to Jesus. I could never do that because your dad might divorce me if I did that. I mean, things like that. She struggled and struggled to finally break down and say yes to me. So when I was in heaven visiting her and she did that to me, I just thought, wow, it was worth it. Thank you, Jesus. So after that, when she was just thanking me so much for telling her about God and heaven, I felt myself starting to slip off the rock. It was like gravity, literal gravity was pulling me back down to the earth. I could feel it. And I grabbed the rock and I grabbed her and I cried out to God in my loudest voice possible. I just said, no, not yet. No, I don't want to go. I don't. No, God, please, no. And I remember trying to reason with him. I remember him reasoning and I said, God, my husband will understand. He'll come down this morning and I'll be in the chair dead, but he'll know that I'm with you. It's okay. I don't have to go back. And he said, no. He said, Wendi, you have to go back. You have to tell people about this place. And I remember just going, oh, God, I can't go back. How can you leave heaven? How can you leave heaven? It's not as easy as you think, okay? So I'm just like, oh, God, no. And then he said, but there are visiting hours in heaven. You can come back. I said, really? Yeah, come back anytime you want. I thought, oh, okay, I'll go. So I let go, and just like that, I woke up in my chair. Boom, my eyes, kind of went like, am I that kind of thing? And I was still under my blanket, still under the blanket. And I remember just kind of bringing the blanket down, and I was so holy, and I was just like, whoa, what just happened to me? That I didn't want to tell anybody because I wanted to ponder. A lot of times Mary pondered things in her heart. Jesus asked me, Jesus told me something long ago. He says, you don't have to kiss and tell, Wendi. You don't have to tell everything that ever happens and anything I ever tell you. You don't always have to just run out and tell everybody. You don't have to kiss and tell. So I know. Some things are very personal, very, very intimate with the Lord. And you don't have to go tell everybody, So that was that moment. That was a moment when I thought, Lord, I don't even know how to start with this. So I'm just not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to ponder it. So about 4 days go by. I don't tell anybody. And finally I tell Eric. I went in and I told him. And then I told my friend Jessica, because she was with me for a week. And it was just so holy. It's just still holy. It's hard to talk about it, And have I been back? Yes, I've been back. Well, right after that, I was back a couple days later because remember when I told you my mom said, he's right here. And I thought, okay, but no, I'm not satisfied with that. So finally, a couple days later, I said, you know what, Lord? Okay, I get it that you were doing something, and I get that okay, I know that your light is all throughout heaven. I get that part. Okay, but I want to know where you were. Where were you? Like, I don't get to go to heaven every day, and I was hoping I'd see you, And the Lord, then immediately I was taken back up. He doesn't have to drag it on. It can happen in a moment. And it did. So in a moment I was taken right back up. But this time, this was 2 days later, this time when I went back up, it was specifically to see where Jesus was. specifically for that. I didn't see the big, beautiful flowers. I didn't hear the trumpets. I didn't see my mother. I went, boom, I was up there in another door, and I heard deliberating going back and forth. Yeah, man, and just kind of anger. I heard anger and stuff, and I looked in the room, and Jesus turned, and he looked right at me. I saw his face, and he looks at me, he goes, here's where I am. Now you watch. And he was, going before the Father and the advocate, and it's all in the Bible. We have an adversary who blames us day and night. And so I believe what the Lord was showing me was the court of heaven. He was showing me that he's making righteous decisions on the earth right now on our behalf. And so that's a whole another thing. But so when I saw that, and I was watching that for probably, I don't know, maybe it seemed like 10 minutes. And then I was just back, so I saw that. And then I did go one other time, and I really haven't shared that one, but it was very brief, and it was after my grandma died. It was after my grandma died in July. And I asked the Lord, because I know we can do this now. It's my home. Heaven's our home. It's our home. Like, my dad has a home in Lodi, California. And I get to go home anytime I want. I get to go anytime I want. Get to go see him. Hey, Dad, I want to come see you. Great, come see me. He's never said, don't come see me. It's my home in Lodi. And so, my Robbie, where I live, our home is his home. He gets to come anytime he wants. In fact, he has a key to my house. Well, heaven is our home, everybody. We have keys to the kingdom. Right? We have the key. So, come boldly to the throne of grace. It's all by faith, but that's a whole nother thing, teaching. But when I woke up, get me back in the armchair with the fuzzy blanket, and I came down, okay? When I opened my eyes and took the blanket off of me, and I looked at the clock, okay? It seemed like I was in heaven maybe 30 minutes. Maybe. Because you don't have any time up there. You're not timing yourself. But if I were to kind of translate what it felt like to being down here, it felt like about maybe 30 minutes I would have been up there. Okay. So when I prayed the prayer, let me see my mom, it was 3:45 in the morning. I remember looking at the clock right before I prayed. When I opened my eyes after coming back into my chair, it was 5:30 in the morning. So that was what, 3:30 to 2 hour encounter. So this isn't like crazy, isn't it? Okay, so then all my grief, remember I told you about the spirit of grief I had? Gone. I have never cried a missing tear. I mean, I miss her. And I'll tell her, Mama, I miss you. But that grief, that was just like, you don't want to wake up. You're just so sad and lonely, and that was just gone. So I believe Jesus delivered me from that. And I think there's deliverance. God, when you encounter God, or you encounter heaven, or you encounter even an angel, or you encounter Jesus himself, do you know that everything just falls away? Everything falls away. Depression falls away. Sickness falls away. Sadness falls away. Worry falls away. It can't exist in the encounter with him because he's beautiful. He's beautiful. I mean, I could go on and on with stories of encounters that are of a different nature than going to heaven. I've had plenty of encounters. And every time I've had an encounter with him or his hosts or the supernatural, whatever was causing me to act a certain way was completely gone. So I guess I want to say this and end with this, and that is, in these last days, in these treacherous, the Bible calls these perilous times. They're perilous times. They're treacherous. They're lacking love. They're lacking all that God has for us in these days. There's disappointment around every corner. You know, don't you just feel like you're constantly just fighting to take your next breath sometimes? Spiritually or physically, literally, possibly in your body, or just everything's such a fight sometimes. Don't you feel like you just got to fight for everything? You got to fight for that paycheck. You got to fight for that, just going after it. And that's what this world is about, is going after it. It's going after it. You got to fight for your relationship. You got to fight for whatever it is. It's all constant. But in heaven, there's no fights. There's no fights. So what's very cool about that lesson is the more you experience him, heaven, the supernatural, unzip it, look in, and experience that, less and less fighting has to occur. And I believe that's where the Bible talks about entering his rest. Because there is a rest that we can walk in. Doesn't matter what's going on around you. Does not matter what you're losing. Doesn't matter what's being stolen from you. Doesn't matter. Because in the encounter, there's a rest. So I just want to encourage you to seek him for his sake, his encounter's namesake. Seek him, seek his face, seek his presence, seek his visit, seek his visitation. I climb the highest mountaintop, swim the deepest ocean too, grab me some wood and hay and stubble, make me wings to fly. Closer, closer to you, I wanna be closer, closer to you, yeah, yeah. I jump out of an airplane, going 30,000 miles above the land. Now people think that I'm insane, but hey, to free